What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Upper Hand Fantasy Podcast. This is Faraz and Zach. I'm here with Zach Rizzuto. We're going to go over a bunch of news. There's so much news to go over. From the Jamar Chase injury to the Kadarius Toney trade. We're going to go over wide receiver rankings. We're going to go over tight end rankings for Week 8. We got to go over the Thursday night football game. There's a lot to go over this week, Zach. And there's a bunch of injuries going into Week 8 as well. So sit tight. This is an information-packed episode. Okay? Sit tight. Grab a coffee. It's Friday. Grab a beer if you need to. We're almost there. Let's get right to it, dude. Hi. First of all, Zach, how you doing, man? You doing good? Ready for the weekend?
Yeah, I'm so ready. You know, it was a long week. It was a really long week. But Lamar did me some favors last night. I had him in a few leagues. He did pretty well. Overall fantasy output for that game was good. It was a quality game. You know, 2 good games in a row on Thursday night. That's a good streak to be on. I'm not sure if we're gonna be able to keep it up next week because we got Eagles Texans next week. It's probably gonna be a blowout. But these last 2 games have been pretty good.
Probably. Didn't do so well on my higher lowers on Underdog last night, right? The Mark Andrews injury didn't help. My Tom Brady ones came through. He didn't throw a pick. He threw more than the attempts I thought he was going to throw. Kate Otten, I had him at over 29.5 receiving yards. You know what his route percentage was yesterday? 92%. He ran around 92% of Tom Brady's routes. That's amazing. If you told me that, I'd be like, hell yeah, he's going over 29 receiving yards. 9 times out of 10, he's going to go over that receiving prop right there.
Was that the case?
Same thing with Chris Godwin. You know what I'm saying? Oh, man, whatever. So many injuries in this game, dude. Rashad Bateman apparently tweaked his foot injury, so who knows if that affects his status going into Week 9. Mark Andrews came into the game with a knee injury, left the game with a shoulder injury. The Ravens have a bye after next week. Okay, so keep that in mind. That might affect their decision-making when it comes to both Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman. Now, he what's his name? Isaiah Likely came in, and he balled out, right? 6 catches, 77 yards, and a touchdown. The dude is really, really good. And I'd pick him up this week in case Andrews is out the following week. Remember, bye week, the following week, after Week 9, Week 10, they have a bye week. It's possible that it's going to be the Isaiah Likely show in Week 9. So just keep that in mind. He did his thing. The dude is good, really good. And every time he's had opportunity, he's done his thing.
Yeah, it seems like Isaiah Likely, you know, he's a handcuff, which is weird to think about. You know, a handcuff at the tight end position, it doesn't really make sense. But I think that we saw what he was capable of. Obviously, I think you were a little bit higher on him before he's even drafted, you know, with the rookie draft kit because of his athletic profile. He showed it last night. He looked really good in the stead of Mark Andrews. Even if Mark Andrews is down, I think that, you know, this offense will be able to stay afloat regardless of who is at tight end because Isaiah Likely is that talented. If Mark Andrews doesn't play, it looks like Likely's likely going to be a very nice asset for you. And, you know, at a tight end position that has 0 depth whatsoever, you know, he could actually return some value, I think, if Mark Andrews would miss some time. He might jump right into the top 10.
I can see it. I mean, I would probably rank, if Mark Andrews is out next week, I would rank Likely probably as a top 4 or 5 tight end, to be honest with you. Like, he's that
top 10
good.
might be conservative,
Yeah. Honestly, like, because there's nothing there, right? Like, he's probably gonna.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's the overall tight end 1 on the week. You know, after it's all said and done.
That's true.
If Andrews does miss. Gus Edwards also left the game with a hamstring injury, so that's not good. I would assume he won't be the guy next week, even with the extra time to rest. Again, you know, they have that bye after next week, so they might end up resting him. Kenyon Drake is likely next up. This time, I'm okay adding Kenyon Drake because, you know, it's attrition. It's a war of attrition at this point, right? Like, no J.K. Dobbins, potentially no Gus Edwards. So it's going to be between Kenyon Drake and Justice Hill, right? So pick him up on waivers this upcoming week.
I'll take Kenyon Drake in a battle between him and Justin Hill.
Yeah, I think so. Leonard Fournette's day got saved with a touchdown. He saw 12 opportunities to Rachaad White's 7 opportunities. Rachaad White continues to look good, but he didn't see as many snaps as he did last week in terms of like snap share between these two guys. But just expect these snaps and opportunities to go up and down as the season goes on, and it's going to be really hard to predict. What these snap shares look like, what these opportunity distributions look like moving forward. It's going to be tough to gauge as of right now.
Yeah, I think so. But for me, I'm anticipating, it might be tough to gauge exactly how it's going to, shake out at the end of the day. But I think Leonard Fournette is still going to end up, with the majority of the carries, and Rachaad White's going to touch or opportunities, I should say. And Rachaad White's going to end up with, less, or I think last night was a lot of opportunities for him by his own standards so far this season. I don't think that it's going to be anything that Rachaad White's going to be challenging Leonard Fournette. I don't see that. So if I'm a Leonard Fournette manager, I'm not worried about it. I'm not thinking that it's going to be a big issue. Obviously, you want to see him touch the ball a little bit more than 12 times. That touchdown, the Bucs offense looked really good that first drive, and then after that, they just sputtered. I think that kind of has to do with Leonard Fournette underproducing. But overall, I don't have anything to worry about. I don't think there's anything to worry about with Leonard Fournette, even though Rachaad White, he has looked good. I'm not worried about him biting too much into Leonard Fournette's share of the pie.
Who has looked better? Who looked better to you last night between those two guys?
I don't want to play the game. So this is the one thing. I can see you put me in a corner. Rachaad White is younger, and he's getting touches through the air more than touches on the ground. Leonard Fournette is doing the dirty work. So yes, it's easy to look flashy when Leonard Fournette's doing the dirty work. For a fantasy perspective, if I want to say, if you're talking about eye test, the way they look when they have the ball in their hands, I'd say Rachaad White. But usage, Leonard Fournette, 100% all the way.
I hear that. Now, it stinks because Leonard Fournette only got 3 touches in the last 2, less than 10 carries each of the last 2 weeks. It's something to be concerned about, I think. I think it's like, this is not what you want from your RB1, right? Like, this is a guy that we've been ranking in the top 10. Well, we didn't rank him in the top 10 this week, or did we? I don't even remember if we did or not. We did, because it was supposed to be a really, really good matchup. And it was a really, really good matchup.
Yeah.
He just didn't take advantage of it. So if he can't come through in a matchup like this, when is he going to come through? He's going to come through when he is given some hyper production. When he's given a ton of touches, like when he's given a ton of opportunity. Like, we need to see it. We need to see it, at some point.
There's Faraz's tip of the day. Fantasy players will produce when they hyper produce.
All he needs is some hyper production.
That's all
in
you
order
need
to put up some numbers.
Just one good drive. That's all you need.
All right, let's get into some news. Adam Schefter reported that Ja'Marr Chase could be sidelined for 4 to 6 weeks and can potentially go on short-term IR. He's going to seek even more answers around this injury soon, and hoping that he comes back with some good news, or news that isn't worse than it already is. But in the meantime, T. Higgins is a wide receiver 1 going forward. Tyler Boyd is a top 24 wide receiver. He's a top 24 wide receiver moving forward. I'm starting Boyd this week, but I am tempering expectations because the Browns have been the best team in the league defending slot receivers this year.
I think that's fair, but I think ultimately both of these receivers are going to be fantasy relevant, good fantasy receivers. T. Higgins, we said that if he's on a majority of other teams, he's a wide receiver 1. He's just buried behind Ja'Marr Chase. Now Ja'Marr Chase is out of the way. T. Higgins is going to be clear wide receiver 1 moving forward. I think that he's going to have really nice upside for anybody that has him, especially after underproducing his past 2 weeks. He hasn't really shown up, so I think he's going to finally, be able to produce for those managers that have him. And then Tyler Boyd, he had that great week last week, and we were saying to sell him. Now maybe, we might have missed it a little bit. We might have missed the mark a little bit on it, because Tyler Boyd's value is now, through the roof, because he's wide receiver 2 with Joe Burrow playing out of his mind. I think that's, definitely worth mentioning. I think that both of these receivers are good. I think both of them as top 24 every week is a pretty safe bet.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, if you have Ja'Marr Chase and you need to win now, try your best to trade him to a team who is 6-1, 5-2. Do what you got to do, right? Even if you get shafted on the trade, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be fair. Okay, just get guys who can help you win right now. Don't worry about what Chase will do for that dude you traded him to, when he comes back. You have to worry about your own team. You have your own team to worry about. Just get those wins right now. And if you need wins, do not let Ja'Marr Chase just sit on your bench.
Right.
Another piece of news here. Kadarius Toney was traded to the Chiefs for a conditional 3rd round and 6th round pick. That's a considerable package for Toney right there. Apparently, he's healthy. They have a bye this week, and he's going to be good to go after the bye. He pulled Kevin Nash in the wheelchair with the fake cast, apparently, and it seems like it's true in this scenario. So, here's the thing: Kadarius Toney instantly becomes in line to compete for the highest target share among wide receivers on the Chiefs. On the Chiefs, there is no wide receiver on the Chiefs that has higher than 18% target share this year. Juju has 18% on the year. MVS has 15% on the year. And he is a wide receiver who has been commanding targets when he's on the field. He was 12th among all wide receivers last year as a rookie in yards per route run. And the fact that he crossed the 2 yards per route run threshold is a big indicator of future success. And we've talked about that at length this preseason. And once he saw playing time last, he was being targeted at a higher rate per route than any other wide receiver in the league. And what is the hardest thing to do as a wide receiver in this league? It's to earn targets. And when a wide receiver's earn targets, you got to pay attention. Regardless if there's no one behind him, it's a very hard thing to do. And then I haven't even mentioned his yards after the catch ability, right? So you kind of put that all together and you combine him with Andy Reid. This is a dangerous situation right now.
Yeah, and with Kadarius Toney, you look at the Chiefs' offense, I would be a little bit less excited about Kadarius Toney if someone like Juju or, MVS has established themselves at this point as like a clear number one. Obviously, Juju's come on the past 2 weeks, but nobody is really, be taking that wide receiver one spot, that sole wide receiver one spot on this Chiefs offense just yet. And with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, that is going to be, huge if somebody can do that. I think Kadarius Toney can do that. We just talked about his ability to what's called demand targets, that kind of thing. I think that if he could step in and have him build a role for himself, a niche in this offense, he's going to be just fine. I think he might have really good days ahead of him. Obviously, we were excited about him on the Giants, because there wasn't much competition, but now it seems like that wide receiver room's got a little bit crowded and they shipped him out to Kansas City. I think it's a crowded wide receiver room, but he might be the most talented receiver there right now.
Yeah, I think you're right. And
outside
these
of
are all
Kelsey,
reasons
he's a tight end.
Yeah, exactly. And these are all reasons I was high on drafting him this offseason at his price, and now he's in the Chiefs. And I think as long as he stays healthy, he has a chance of surpassing these guys in target share. Yeah. Now, this is also good news for Wan'Dale Robinson rest of season. He's the clear number one guy there right now moving forward. He should be at least a low-end PPR wide receiver 3 at the very least.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I like Wan'Dale Robinson. I like his ability. It looks like he's almost like a smaller version of Kadarius Toney, just the way the speed that he plays the twitch, So that's kind of what he reminds me of. But I think that, he's going to be a nice, safe option in the passing game, even though Daniel Jones, he's not a great passer. He's a game manager with legs. That's about it. But I think that if anybody's going to get done through the air in New York, it's going to be Wan'Dale.
Zach is officially the Leonard Fournette truther and the Daniel Jones hater.
I'm a Daniel Jones truther. That's what I am. The truth is that he can't play. That's what I think.
I love that. That's great. All right, let's get into some more news here. Deebo Samuel so far this week has not practiced. My guess is that he's going to be out. Let's see if he gets any practice time today on Friday. If he's out, upgrade all the other receivers, including Christian McCaffrey. I don't think Jalen Ramsey ends up shadowing Brandon Ayuk, just not what he really does. So I wouldn't be too, thrown off by that. I would have Ayuk in my lineup as like a solid wide receiver 2 this week.
Yeah, I like Brandon Ayuk. He actually has shown me a little bit that he can handle a higher target share and get it done through the air. I wasn't, too turned on to that idea. I wasn't sure how good this 49ers offense was going to be, obviously with Trey Lance and then Jimmy Garoppolo coming in, but he's looked good the past 2 weeks. I think you could trust him, to produce this week.
All right. Metcalf also probably won't play this week, so expect Lockett to be the focal point of that passing attack, who, by the way, got a full practice in on Thursday. And if you want to throw in Marquise Goodwin, if you're desperate, sure. But I think Lockett, we'll talk about it because we're talking about wide receivers today and why I like his matchup more than most this week against the Giants. Now, we just got an alert here that Zeke did practice. Is that right? Did he practice today? I think we did. I'm looking that up right now. If he did, that would be some. He's not. Apparently, he's not expected to play. But he did practice on Friday, or he is going to practice on Friday, something like that. I have to check.
I think I saw some sort of alert that came through saying that, he was actually had a shot to play. I think the report was Zeke has a chance to play this week against the Bears. It was the wording of the report that I saw.
He's doing better than anticipated, but he might not play. That's the report I'm seeing right now. And I would assume he doesn't play. Now, either way, I would say that they're probably going to do their best to sit him. Like, he probably wants to play. He's probably going to do what he can to play. But my guess is that they're going to try to sit him. They're going to have him rest through the bye. So, that's what I would assume. Either way, I'm playing Tony Pollard. So, and they had that bye coming up as well. So, like, you might be able to have Tony Pollard as an RB1 this week. You might be able to have Tony Pollard as an RB1 coming out of the bye as well if Zeke continues to be out. We'll see how that knee is treating him coming out the bye. Devontae Adams has the flu. Looks like someone didn't get their flu shot. A bad one, apparently. And he might have to get this Michael Jordan flu game going, because Marshawn Lattimore is probably out this week, and he hasn't practiced yet with an abdomen injury. So Devontae Adams is expected to play. So, but I would just have a backup option just in case that flu gets bad.
Yeah.
Alan Lazard, he said himself that he probably won't play this weekend due to a shoulder injury. Aaron Rodgers was talking serious smack, about Romeo Doubs on the Pat McAfee show, talking about limiting his reps out there. He didn't mention Doubs by name, but who the hell else was he talking about? He was talking about Romeo Doubs, who, Aaron Rodgers threw a skip pass at him, like it hit the floor first, and then he's blaming Romeo Doubs for that, and there's been other things that he's blaming him for. But Doubs didn't have one catch in that game last week. Christian Watson has been limited in practice this week. Who knows if he'll end up playing? But he's worth a prospective ad in case he does end up playing, because he's going to get some opportunity out of the gate here. It seems like Randall Cobb's out, Romeo Doubs not doing his thing, and Sammy Watkins, who knows, where he stands in the pecking order at this point. But, Doubs can also go out and have a big game this week, potentially. You never know. Like, he's definitely tough to trust right now. With Lazard out, normally, if Aaron Rodgers wasn't talking shit, you would probably think that, all right, well, Doubs is going to go out and do something this week, right? And it's possible he still does. He might correct it, but he's just really hard to trust.
Yeah, I'm not trusting any Packers receivers, at this point in time, because just the offense overall in Green Bay looks terrible. Aaron Rodgers seems to only be comfortable now, where he used to be comfortable throwing to Romeo Doubs. Obviously, he was like, all right, maybe you trust him a little bit as a receiver. Now he's only comfortable throwing to Aaron Jones. At least that's what it looked like last week, because he threw both of his touchdowns to Aaron Jones. And they weren't, easy passes. It seems like Aaron Jones could get force fed at this point. Aaron Rodgers isn't happy with his receiving core right now. I wouldn't be starting any of these guys with expectations of anything, fantasy relevant. They're flex plays for me. Every Packers receiver right now, and maybe a wide receiver 3 in a pinch if you have that many slots on your roster.
I would say Romeo Doubs is like a flex play at best, upside flex play, and then Christian Watson, you shouldn't put him in your lineup, even if he starts. Now, Chuba Hubbard has been ruled out, so Deontay Foreman becomes a low-end RB2. Just remember, they're on a bad offense. They have the lowest implied, or one of the lowest implied totals for the week this week, so don't expect a whole lot. However, he's still a good play. I would say, he might see a role on all 3 downs. Maybe he's not an every down guy, but he's going to see a role on all 3 downs, and he's looked solid so far this year. He's looked solid last year as well. So, he could have a good game. I think if you have him, you need running back help, and Chuba's out. You picked him up on waivers. Deontay's a good bet to be solid for you this week. It doesn't look like Russell Wilson. So Russell Wilson looks like he will be good to go this week, which is good news for them, I think. Is that good news? I don't know if that's
good news. Is it good news? We don't know.
I don't know. I think Courtland Sutton gets a bit of an upgrade with him back, because with the first 5 weeks of the season, he's got it done with Russell Wilson. So I would assume that that's a good thing for him. The Jaguars' perimeter defense isn't amazing. They've held it down for the most part, but I don't think this is a matchup issue for Courtland Sutton. I think he'll be fine this week. Mac Jones is going to be the quarterback for the Patriots this week, according to Bill Belichick. He said he will be the quarterback, and I think that means that he will be the only quarterback playing in this game. That's the hope.
Yeah.
A few guys who might be traded before Tuesday's trade deadline. Just want to mention a few of these guys before we get into the rankings. Jerry Jeudy, right? The Giants are interested, according to reports. They badly needed a wide receiver. He instantly becomes their best wide receiver, I think. I think that situation would be considered an upgrade for Jerry Jeudy, if he's like the primary target on that offense. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. The way that he's being used right now in Denver's offense is not fantasy conducive. Obviously, he's had a couple, splash games, but outside of that, nothing to really, write home about with Jerry Jeudy. I think that Cortland Sutton's the guy there in Denver right now. And with Greg Dulcich coming on, it looks like he's going to be pretty good in this offense, especially with Russell Wilson. He's been targeting tight ends a lot. Jerry Jeudy just feels like he's not home in the offense. They did spend a first-round pick to get him. They're not using him like a first-round pick. I think that he'd be better off, maybe if he goes, like you said, the Giants are one of the potential suitors. We just talked about Wan'Dale Robinson. That would lower my opinion of his value. But I think that Jerry Jeudy, if he does move, his value can only go up because right now it's boom or bust every week.
Yeah, pretty much. Alvin Kamara as well. Apparently the Eagles are interested in trading for Kamara. Kamara even posted the Michael Jackson popcorn meme in the movie theater, right, on Twitter.
Yeah.
So maybe that would indicate that he would welcome a move to go from a losing team to an undefeated one. That would kind of be better for Kamara. Like I think it would be like a CMC type of situation where the touches and opportunities might go down just a bit, but the efficiency goes up, right? And Miles Sanders would obviously take a big hit if that were to happen. I feel like if they bring in Kamara, they should probably trade Sanders like in that same deal back to New Orleans.
Right. I think that, you talk about maybe it being a Christian McCaffrey situation. I think that kind of sums it up perfectly because they have plenty of talent already in that. But I don't think this would be a necessary addition to the Eagles roster. It would be, splashy. Obviously, it would be like, okay, the Eagles are all in. We know that this offense is just going to be ridiculous now. But there's already A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. And Jalen Hurts is fantasy. He's a fantasy producer on his own, And then you have Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell getting it done. I don't think there's too much room for Alvin Kamara to improve. I think I'd view him very similarly to where he's at right now in the Saints backfield because the Saints offense hasn't been that good for Kamara so far.
Brandon Cooks as well. I think his value, no matter where he lands, will go up. The quarterback situation has been extremely rough for him this year. Davis Mills, somebody that we thought maybe could take a step forward this year, has taken a step backwards. So he's not the answer. And, if he lands on the Packers, great. But the Packers are apparently trying to get AJ Green. So who knows what will happen there.
AJ Green. Ugh.
Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't hear about that, but that's disgusting anyway.
Yeah, it is. Apparently Aaron Rodgers has been wanting to play with AJ Green.
To each his own. To each his own. I wouldn't pick AJ Green. Pick of the litter. I'd go for a higher profile target. Like maybe we could go get
Derek Jeudy, a DJ Moore, a Brandon Cooks. That'd be nice. Kareem Hunt, he can be a fantasy RB1 on a few teams if he gets moved. Fourth round pick apparently is all it's going to take. So that'll work.
I thought I saw a report somewhere that actually linked him to the Rams. I was like, oh, this prediction could happen. Maybe he'll go to the Rams. I was like, that would be perfect for him, I think, because right now there's nobody in the Rams backfield. I know Darrell Henderson's been all right, but Kareem Hunt would easily get the touches that he needs to go back to that. I think even elite RB1 status, that we saw when he was with the Chiefs.
Antonio Gibson apparently is interested. A lot teams are interested in Antonio Gibson. We talked about him potentially being moved. The Bills, that would be a great option for him, I think. The Bills could grab Kareem Hunt, but I feel like Kareem Hunt has been available for a while, and the Bills just haven't been interested. But I think Antonio Gibson could be an interesting one moving forward. Yeah. But we'll see. Were there any other names that I missed that were potentially on the trade block?
Not that I really can think of off the top of my head, but with Antonio Gibson, right. You talk about him maybe going to the Bills. I think that would just be more of the same in the Bills backfield. I think they have a lot of jack of all trades, but masters of none. That's what Devin Singletary is. He's all right. And I think Antonio Gibson is all right. I think it would just make it a little bit more of a mess. Devin Singletary. It would only hurt Devin Singletary. It wouldn't provide Antonio Gibson any boost, I don't think.
I think Antonio Gibson would be easily the best running back in that backfield. I don't think Devin Singletary is that good, man. And I think Antonio Gibson is a good running back, just being severely underutilized on that offense. He's a really, really good pass catcher. And I feel like since they're not going to give, James Cook that work in the passing game, maybe because he's not as good of an all around back. Antonio Gibson probably is more skilled in that department, just being better all around, but being a better pass catcher than Devin Singletary.
That's fair. Maybe I'm being a little too harsh because we've only seen Antonio Gibson on the Commanders and the football team.
That's literally, it has to be it, man. I don't know.
Perhaps
I
I'm
would
treating
love
him
to
too
see
harshly.
him in a new spot, just because I don't think Antonio Gibson's like one of the best running backs in the league. I just think he's just way better than how they've been using him. That's all.
Yeah,
All right.
I guess that's true. I'll give you that. Maybe.
Thanks, man.
Like I said, maybe I was too harsh, but we'll see.
I appreciate it, man. All right, let's get into the wide receiver rankings. We got Cooper Kupp here, number 1, believe it or not. And by the way, the last time he played the 49ers, he caught 14 balls on 19 targets for 122 yards. So he's going to be just fine this week. He's followed by Justin Jefferson against Arizona, Tyreek Hill against Detroit in an amazing matchup against the Lions, Stephon Diggs against Green Bay, which maybe you can be worried about Jair Alexander, but you shouldn't be. Justin Jefferson went 9 for 184 and 2 touchdowns on them. Terry McLaurin just last week went 5 for 73 and 1 against Jair Alexander last week. So, it's kind of crazy how this Green Bay secondary hasn't been tested this entire year. Like, just looking at like the teams that they played. So I wouldn't be worried about it at all for Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
Amon-Ra St. Brown at 5 against Miami. He's expected to clear the concussion protocol in time. Kind of surprised he hasn't cleared as of yet. So I am confused a little bit.
Yeah.
But he should be cleared.
Yeah, considering he didn't have a concussion. What's he
still
doing in the concussion protocol? It's like,
yeah.
I don't know what that's about. I think he plays this week. I wouldn't, worry about it until it comes out and says that, Amon-Ra St. Brown isn't playing. I'm assuming he's playing.
I would assume so too. That's the hope. Jalen Waddle at 6, again, in a great matchup. Devonta Adams at 7 against New Orleans. Like we mentioned about him, he has the flu, and, hopefully he plays. He is expected to go. Just have another option ready just in case. DeAndre Hopkins at number 8 this week. I normally wouldn't be ranking him this high, but he has a really good matchup, and he's coming off a 50% target share game. 80% of his routes last week either came out of the slot or the left perimeter. And at these 2 specific spots, the Vikings are giving up the 5th most fantasy points and the 2nd most fantasy points, respectively. Patrick Peterson this year has actually been pretty solid, but he hasn't shadowed all year, and he has been stuck on the offense's right perimeter all year long. So I don't expect Hopkins to see much of him this week.
Yeah.
So I think he can have another blow-up game.
Yeah, and the way we saw DeAndre Hopkins used last week, that's actually very encouraging considering that he missed the first 6 games, and he missed a lot of football last season too, with the Cardinals. They still want to use him like that. Kyler Murray's happy to, force feed him the ball. And DeAndre Hopkins didn't score last week, right?
He did not.
He produced even without the touchdown. So I think that's going to continue this week. And you say about the matchup with Minnesota, they've just been gashed, by receivers. I think that having him at 8, I think that's right where I would pin him to be, but I wouldn't be surprised if he finished a couple spots higher. I don't think he's wide receiver 1 type overall anymore on the week. I think that's kind of out of his range of outcomes with the amount of talent that's still there in Arizona and the offense that he's in, and Cliff Kingsbury. Every time we talk about the Cardinals, we got to talk about Cliff Kingsbury. But I think that top 5, he could finish in the top 5. Just the lower end of top 5.
Like 5?
5 or 4. That's my ceiling. That's where I see the ceiling. Well, just because
I'm with you on that. I don't view Hopkins as like a wide receiver 1 moving forward, like a top 12 option moving forward. I just think this week in particular, he's going to be really, really good.
Yeah.
Okay. I moved T. Higgins up to number 8 with the Jamar Chase news. Solid matchup for him overall this week. Perimeter wide receivers have been able to get it done against the Browns for the most part. But over the last 4 weeks, they have played better. So, if you're expecting like amazing production out of him this week, I'll temper my expectations just a little bit. But he has the upside. He has the talent to come through in any matchup, especially if he's given the opportunity, which he should this week.
Yeah, now with Jamar Chase out, it's T. Higgins' show. I think, like
Pretty
I
much.
said, he is on many teams. If he went to a bunch of other teams, he'd be wide receiver one. There's only a couple teams that he wouldn't actually be the wide receiver. Now we're going to be able to see it. I think T. Higgins has the talent. I think he'll capitalize. I don't think there's going to be a situation where fantasy managers are let down unless an injury would happen. I don't think there's any chance. I think that he's one of the safest options this week.
I have A.J. Brown at wide receiver 10 overall this week. I have Devontae Smith at wide receiver 16 overall. I really think that these two can take advantage of the Steelers secondary, especially on the perimeter. The Steelers secondary has gotten healthier and has played relatively well over the past 2 weeks. They held Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to 4 for 88 and 7 for 72, which for these two, relatively speaking, is holding them in check. The week prior against the Bucs, Mike Evans was held to 4 for 42. But the Bucs have been struggling, right, to really find their offense for the most part lately. The Eagles, on the other hand, I think they're going to have a day against the secondary coming off the bye. Levi Wallace has been picked on by opposing quarterbacks. He's being targeted at a whopping 28% on routes run against him. And he's going to see a lot of Devontae Smith on that right side of the offense. Ahkello Witherspoon hasn't been targeted as much as Wallace, but is still over 20% of routes run against him. And he's also vulnerable and given up more than average production against him on the outside. So he's going to mostly see AJ Brown, and both these guys, AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, move around quite a bit, but they mostly stick on the perimeter. And from a fantasy perspective, the Steelers have given up the second most fantasy points to perimeter wide receivers. So I'm expecting a big day from these two guys.
Yeah, I agree. And we saw what Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs were able to do against Steelers defense. The Eagles have very similar 1-2 receivers. They've been getting it done at a high level against some high-profile defenses, most recently against my Cowboys, before the bye last week. And we've been talking about this for a few weeks now, that we haven't really seen A.J. Brown take over a game. And this could be his first signature performance uniform. Just 2 touchdown receptions on 33 catches on the year for Brown, short of his career average of 13% that he set between 2019 and 2021. The positive regression, I think, is coming. It's shortly on the horizon, and we should be seeing a lot more of A.J. Brown in the end zone post-bye. And I think that's going to start this week against Pittsburgh.
All right. We have Tyler Lockett here at number 11. The Seahawks will most likely be without DK Metcalf. Lockett should get the lion's share of targets against the Giants. The Giants are playing the most man coverage out of any team in the NFL right now. And Dwayne McFarland, he tweeted a list of wide receivers with the highest percentage of a step or more of separation. Tyler Lockett was number 1 on the list at creating a step of separation against single man coverage on 70% of his routes. So he's the best in the league in doing that right now. The dude can ball. Okay, so now the Giants have completely, been. If you look at where the Giants have been getting up the production and where Tyler Lockett has lined up at, they have pretty much shut down the right perimeter this year, the Giants have. And they've been giving up the least amount of fantasy points to that side. That's a Dory Jackson side. But the good thing is that Tyler Lockett, he moves around so much that he should be avoiding it quite a bit. So he plays in the left, he plays in the slot. So he should be all right in this matchup. So I'm not too worried about it. I think the target distribution is going to be pretty tightly distributed in Tyler Lockett's direction this week.
Yeah, no, I think that's, fair to say. We saw Marquise Goodwin kind of, fill in for DK Metcalf admirably last week, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to retain that type of target share. We know Geno Smith does like throwing to tight ends anyway. They have Noah Fant, they have Will Dissly. But Kenneth Walker, he seems to be becoming the engine of the offense, the identity of the offense, even with, Tyler Lockett doing his thing. I think Tyler Lockett is good for a touchdown this week. Like we said, Geno Smith is just playing so well. The Seahawks offense looks so much better. Without DK Metcalf, obviously he demands targets and coverage, but I think, like you said, Tyler Lockett being one of the great separators in the league, I think that he should be able to produce regardless of the matchup. The Giants are a bit of a stingy defense, but I think that they can be taken of. I like Tyler Lockett.
I got CeeDee Lamb here at 12, but I'm making a switch. I have CeeDee Lamb at 12. Chris Godwin, I had Chris Godwin at 13. I had Mike Evans at 14. But somebody in the comments today on Instagram asked me, hey, who would you rather start this week, CeeDee Lamb or Chris Olave? And I'm like, that's a good question. I kind of like Chris Olave more this week.
Maybe do. Against Las Vegas defense? Yeah, maybe.
I think so. Because with CeeDee Lamb, and he's already a little bit down for me, like at 12. I'm usually ranking him a lot higher. Noah Brown. Noah Brown. Why are you getting a 28% target share?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, he's a little bit banged up right now, but either way, like CeeDee only had 24% target share. That's good, but like, give me 30, and like, can we take a little bit of targets away from Noah Brown? Can we take a little bit of targets away, from his favorite tight end in the world, who has a banged up knee right now?
Yeah.
I don't want to play any games, Dak. All right, but in this particular matchup, like, I see Dallas controlling this game on the ground, not necessarily needing to force the ball to CeeDee Lamb, with their defense kind of taking care of things as well. We kind of talked about this yesterday. And then the Bears themselves, they haven't allowed a ton of fantasy points to wide receivers. That's part of the reason. But they've allowed the second least fantasy points to wide receivers over the last 4 weeks, the second least out of the slot where CeeDee Lamb runs a lot of his routes from. Just don't see a ton of upside from CeeDee this week. He's obviously in my lineup, but it's a little bit tough. Right?
Yeah.
Now, I did want to say that, our data analytics partner, Preciser, has the Cowboys at an 88% chance of winning this game. So the game script just might not be there for CeeDee to have a huge game. And I do want to shout out our sponsor for this podcast episode, Preciser. They use data-driven analytics and algorithms to make game predictions to help you make better bets, make better start-sit decisions, and make better DFS lineups. I'll have the link in the description, but you can check them out at preciser.io/prediction. And make sure to use the code UPPERHAND to get 30% off the first 3 months of their pro package, which ends up coming out to only $6.99 a month to get all of their data every single week. So they have a free package as well that you can check out if you don't want to commit. But make sure you use the code UPPERHAND when you sign up to get that pro package.
Right.
But,
And
going back to that, though, like Chris Olave, right? He has a good matchup against the Raiders. You expect him to get the lion's share of targets. Michael Thomas is out. Jarvis Landry's out. Right? Like, who are you going with, dude? Am I right on that? Should I make that change?
Yeah, I think you might be able to make that change because now you're looking at a bunch of factors. I think the only thing that would have CeeDee Lamb kind of sitting up there is name value because everyone is still hoping that he can, the production can match up with the usage that he's been getting. And, I think it can, but it's going to be slow. It's going to take a little while yet, I think, before he gets to that point. And with Chris Olave, you mentioned the matchup. I think the game script is much better. It's going to be much better for Chris Olave than CeeDee Lamb. The matchup, the defense they're playing against the Raiders have been porous. And with Chris Olave, he's going to benefit probably from Michael Thomas being out, like you said again, and Jarvis Landry. He's been a go-to guy regardless of who's at quarterback and who's starting at receiver for the Saints. So I like Chris Olave. Maybe I might put him over CeeDee Lamb this week.
Nice. All right, Devontae Smith, we have him at number 16, like we mentioned. Michael Pittman at 17 against a Washington perimeter that Aaron Rodgers should have taken advantage of last week. But this is a great matchup for him either way. Let's hope that Sam Ehlinger can keep his fantasy value and fantasy, upside alive. I like the matchup. This is why I have him here. A little bit risky, but I'm okay putting him here. I have Courtland Sutton at 18 with Russ back. Who would you rather play this week, Courtland Sutton or Michael Pittman?
This is Jacksonville. I think that I would start Courtland Sutton. I think that
okay.
I would put it just because there's uncertainty surrounding Michael Pittman right now. He came off. Last week was a good week for Michael Pittman, but that was with Matt Ryan. I want to see how Michael Pittman looks with Sam Ehlinger at quarterback before I make any determinations. I think it's okay to have him ranked there. I think his ceiling, the way he's been playing, the way the offense has been looking is just a slight bit better than Denver. So I get why you have him at 17 and Courtland Sutton at 18, but I think Sutton for me is the play, especially against Jacksonville.
Love it. I got Amari Cooper at number 19 against Cincinnati. Tyler Boyd at 20. I moved him up to a wide receiver 2. Just again, temper expectations on him a little bit, because Cleveland has given up the least fantasy points to slot wide receivers. I expect Joe Burrow to still target him. He's going to be in my lineup, most likely. And but it's worth noting that they've been the best team covering the slot this year. Brandon Ayuk at 21, most likely without Debo. I'm expecting him to get a solid target share in this game. He already had 23% target share, 28% target share over the last 2 weeks. So it's looking good for him this week. And I have Gabe Davis at 22. He's like the upside play, you just kind of have to leave in your lineup, as we talked about before.
Yeah, we've beat the Gabe Davis horse to death. I mean, it is just, we've talked about him at length, and we talked about him. I said it at the beginning of the season that we're going to have him here right at this low wide receiver 2 range, just because that's really the only way you can value him, because he has such high upside, but also such a low floor. He's either winning you your matchup or losing you your matchup. And we talk about that kind of player, that's the kind of player that you can't bench, even though your first instinct might tell you to bench him. I don't think you can bench him. I think 22 is a good ranking. I think he could easily outperform that. We're going to just keep seeing Gabe Davis in this range. Obviously he wasn't here last week because the Bills were on bye, but I've liked what I've seen more from Gabe Davis these past few weeks than I did at the beginning of the season. I think that if he can stay warm, I might actually slide him up a little bit higher if he can stay on a hot streak.
Now I still have Deebo Samuel in here at 21, but now I have Brandon Ayuk there. Just for people who are looking at this graphic here, I have Brandon Ayuk there instead, not Deebo Samuel. Let's see, who else do I have there? Christian Kirk, I have at 24, but guess who I got at 23? A little bit of a surprise. Jakobi Meyers coming out of nowhere. Great matchup out of the slot against the Jets this week. I have him at 23. The Jets have given up the 10th most fantasy points to slot wide receivers this year. Their strength on defense has been on the perimeter. That's why we liked Judy last week, and he went 7 for 96. So I'm looking for a similar type of output from Jakobi Meyers this week.
Yeah, and you look at Jakobi Meyers' game log, and it looks pretty good. He's actually been pretty good fantasy points per game wise. He missed 2 games, so you're not going to see his overall point total being that high. You might have him. I think is he a wide receiver 36 or something like that, or 38. That's a little bit deceiving for what Jakobi Meyers has been able to do. He's produced despite a little turnover at quarterback. Obviously, there's a little bit of drama there going on between Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones. But regardless of who's our quarterback, he's getting it done for you week in and week out. He's a very good flex play. He could be a wide receiver 2 player for you each week if you need to, especially with these bye weeks still going on. But I like Jakobi Meyers. I said he wasn't going. He might have been going undrafted in some cases, depending on leagues. How they shake out. But he was going undrafted. This offseason. Now he's producing pretty well. I'm happy having him in my lineup. Moving forward.
We got DJ Moore at 25. He's shown signs of life with PJ Walker last week. Caught 7 of 10 targets for 69 yards and a touchdown. Has another good matchup this week against Atlanta. So I'm actually okay starting DJ Moore this week.
Yeah, can you believe it? Right?
Not really.
Who would have thought we'd be saying that?
I'll take that back.
Really? Why?
No. I'm just kidding. It's just hard. It's just hard to trust them, right? But it's a good matchup. Yeah. And it seems like, PJ Walker is like pumping a little bit of life into DJ Moore now at this point.
PJ Walker can throw the ball. And I saw a report that Baker Mayfield's back. He's healthy. He's going to be the backup. It's like, please keep him as far away from DJ Moore as you can. You know what I'm saying? Because DJ Moore he's just suffering. He's going through it right now. I really hope he gets moved somewhere where he can, have a decent quarterback. But until further notice, I mean, I'm all right with him now because, like we said, he's really the only fantasy asset outside of now Deontay Foreman in the Panthers offense.
We got Terry McLaurin at 26. He was being forced the ball last week from Taylor Heineke, which is kind of what you want, right? It's better than the opposite. Okay.
Yeah.
George Pickens at 27. I got Curtis Samuel at 28. I have George Pickens ahead of Deontay Johnson this week for the first time this year. And at the end of the day, Pickens is the one scoring fantasy points, okay? 14 or more PPR fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games. A little bit of a tough matchup this week against James Bradbury, but Deontay Johnson will most likely see Darius Slay. So both of them have tough matchups. If both of them have tough matchups, I'm just going to go with the guy who's been scoring more fantasy points and getting it done with the targets that he's getting, even though Deontay Johnson is the one who's getting the targets, getting more targets than George Pickens.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett, I think he enjoys, not enjoys, but I think he's happier targeting George Pickens more than Deontay Johnson at this point. I don't know if that has something to do with, the youth movement going on in the Steelers offense right now. They're both rookies, and Deontay Johnson, he's very talented, but he's kind of like a piece that was left on the side. And, a bunch of other players got moved out, the Steelers, except Deontay Johnson. Like all this, what keeps coming back to me is, Deontay Johnson was the only receiver. I was at 2019 draft class. Yeah, that didn't really get a big bag, like say DK Metcalf or Terry McLaurin did. But Deontay Johnson, he's getting it done, but it doesn't seem like the Steelers offense is revolving around him as much anymore. It looks like they're going to give the reins to Kenny Pickett, and he's been targeting George Pickens. That's what it comes down to for me. I didn't think Deontay Johnson was going to be very good in his offense regardless, even with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback, and we kind of seen that happen. George Pickens has overtaken him. Until further notice, I think George Pickens is the guy in Pittsburgh.
Until they get a quarterback.
Yeah. Well, I want to give Kenny Pickett a little bit of time.
I like to press the buttons.
Yeah, I like to
press
Pickett
the buttons.
just a little bit of time. This offense isn't that good, but I don't think you can put that on Kenny Pickett solely right now. It's just overall, they're not performing well.
So I had Curtis Samuel at 28. It's a bit of a tough matchup, but the usage was notable last week. He had 8 targets and 5 carries. That's a Debo light type of role right there. I wouldn't be playing him outside of PPR formats though, with his depth of target being so low most weeks. But it was worth noting because when you get 8 targets and 5 carries, your expected fantasy points goes way up. Okay, and that's a really good start. So if you're wondering like what to do with Curtis Samuel, like most likely he should be in your lineup because of that type of opportunity. I had Rashad Bateman at 29, and then I mentioned Deontay Johnson at 30. Let's move on to tight ends now. I had Mark Andrews at number 1. You can't blame me. Okay, Travis Kelce is on bye this week. Okay, him and Patrick Mahomes and Juju, they're playing Call of Duty this week, right? Like Call of Duty came out, and Patrick Mahomes said, "Hey man, this is what we're doing." Juju said that, "Hey, like the reason why we've been, performing over the last couple of weeks on the field is because we have serious camaraderie on Call of Duty, and now Modern Warfare came out, and now they're going to do their thing on Modern Warfare this week. Expect them to come out of the bye ready after being teammates off the field, within, on Modern Warfare and on what is it called? What's the
Warzone?
Warzone,
the Battle Royale
on Warzone, exactly, Battle Royale, exactly. So, I digress. But Mark Andrews, that didn't work out so well. He can't he had the injury coming in, he got another injury coming out, so not great for him. But Zach Ertz at number 2 in a good matchup against Minnesota. They've given up the 6th most fantasy points to tight ends this year. Dallas Goedert would normally be ahead of Ertz for me, but his matchup is a little tough against Pittsburgh. But still starting him, obviously. Yeah. What do you think of George Kittle, man? I have him here at 4. He's looking a lot more like himself lately, right? And with Debo out, he might see some extra targets. The Rams have been a little bit tough against tight ends for the most part. But what have you seen from George Kittle, and are you encouraged?
I'm 100% encouraged because what we were seeing at the beginning of the season from George Kittle, obviously he missed a couple of games already, but what we saw in those games where he came back was not good fantasy production. He looked like just another tight end, just in this pool of tight ends where people are just streaming him, dropping him, picking him up. That's what it looked like. Now George Kittle's separating himself, and I think I'm, warming up to the idea that he's going to be back in this upper echelon, and by upper echelon, I mean the top 5, the 5 startable tight ends. I think he's going to find a home there.
I think we have another one, though. I think we have more.
All right.
I think we have more. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. I'm interested to see who you say that it is. But, right now we have him on the lower end of that 5 startable tight ends. I wouldn't be surprised if he climbs, all the way up to 3 or, even up with Travis Kelce. I think that's, within his range of outcomes because we've seen, he's done it before with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, and the offense looks very similar. Not much has changed for him. I think he'll get back to being a star tight end, like we're used to.
Yeah, I hope so. He's a joy to watch, and he's one of the most likable players in the league. I want him to do well. I have Tyler Higbee here at number 5. The last time he went up against San Francisco, how many targets did he get? He had 14 targets the last time he went up against San Francisco. I don't know if he's gonna get the same thing this week, but he's been a guy who's been getting a ton of targets. Before the bye, he was a little bit banged up, so he didn't get his full workload, but he's been practicing in full this week. He should be just fine. Pat Freiermuth, he came back, and if you remember, he was a guy that we talked about that you could potentially buy low on while he was banged up. With that concussion, if you needed a tight end, and he came through last week, 9 targets, 8 catches, 75 yards. And I think he could potentially be one of those guys who you're starting every single week. And he was that guy, early on in the season, but he got a little bit banged up. He had the concussion. It wasn't great. And then all the quarterback issues that was going on. But now that they have some stability, now that Kenny Pickett is targeting Freiermuth, and that second half, when Kenny Pickett first came in, he was targeting Freiermuth at a pretty high rate. So another little piece of that sample size there. So Freiermuth is somebody that, could enter this like conversation of an every week tight end. So if you add Travis Kelce into this mix here, he's on bye right now. We have 7 tight ends: Mark Andrews, Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce, Goddard, Kittle, Higbee, Freiermuth, who you're starting every single week. I'm leaving TJ Hawkinson out of that right now. Okay, because like he's been super up and down. He had that one big game, and that's really about it. His production otherwise has really been one of a streaming tight end, right? And that one game was like without all of his weapons in that dream matchup against the Seahawks, right?
Yeah.
Then you have Darren Waller, who I have at 8 here, right? It seems like he's playing this week, but who knows? Got in a limited practice on Wednesday and Thursday. He's a guy that like, can you trust him? Like, obviously, if he's playing, you're probably playing him because you drafted him to be your main tight end. But it's been really iffy with Darren Waller as well this year.
Yeah. I think the problem for Darren Waller is Devontae Adams. And, and Mac Hollins, that one game. But the problem...
Listen, Mac Hollins is continuing to be a nuisance, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. Well, to both Devontae Adams and Darren Waller. But the other thing, especially these past 3 weeks, that's capping all the Raiders receivers, regardless of whether you're a receiver or a tight end, is Josh Jacobs, just going bananas. They're running the offense through him. He's getting majority of the touches. If you're not scoring touchdowns in this offense, what are you doing? You're not producing enough to be fantasy relevant at this point, because unless you score a touchdown through the air, Darren Waller or Devontae Adams, not that Devontae Adams won't produce anyway, but the touchdowns are now funneling to Josh Jacobs. So the touchdown distribution again across all the players in this offense is much tighter. So unless you're scoring, you're probably not doing very well. Darren Waller, has he scored a touchdown yet this year? He scored 1.
I think that was pretty early in the year.
So he hasn't been available either. It's not helping him. So it's going to prevent him from enjoying continuity in the offense, finding a role. He's not going to be able to dig in and get a nice, role in the offense. I think that the days of trusting Darren Waller at tight end are over, at least for me.
Oh, man, that's tough. Taysom Hill, I have him here at number 9 just because, like, he's a shot at upside, right? Like, and by the way, if the Saints do end up trading Alvin Kamara, you have to think that Taysom Hill might be more involved if that does happen. So just keep that in mind. Robert Tonyan, go ahead.
With Taysom Hill, I just think it's funny. I just want to note this, with Alvin Kamara being out, every time they take Alvin Kamara off the field and then they put Taysom Hill at quarterback, like, it's QB power. That's the play. And he still runs. He just blows past guys on defense. Like, they're not even expecting it. Like, it makes no sense to me. They're telegraphing it. It's like, okay, Taysom Hill's at quarterback, and he's the only guy in the backfield. I wonder if they're going to run it to him. Like, of course they're going to run it to him, and they still don't defend him. Taysom Hill, if you're lucky enough, say you had, somebody like Darren Waller, you drafted Darren Waller, and you were expecting him to be the producer for you, I'm starting Taysom Hill over Darren Waller at this point.
I hear that.
Because
I was going to ask you that question because it seemed like you were done with Darren Waller. So I feel like at this point you're starting Taysom Hill.
Even over TJ Hawkinson, like, I know we have him ranked a little bit higher. Obviously their volume in the passing game might be more, but Taysom Hill, he's like I said, the Gabe Davis of tight ends. So it's either you're all the way down at like no production whatsoever, or you're scoring 4 total touchdowns. You know what I'm saying? I think Taysom Hill, he's that kind of player where if you don't have your hands on one of those top guys that we mentioned, I have no problem starting Taysom Hill each week.
All right. I like it. All right. Robert Tonyan at 10. We have Dalton Schultz at 11. Irv Smith. Is it just me, Zach, or is like every time Dalton Schultz makes a catch, like he needs help, like to get up?
Getting up? Oh, no, it's not just you. And this is the thing. And this is going to be the Cowboys fan in me coming out. But he has reduced himself. He's been reduced to the Jason Witten role. If you remember watching Jason Witten play, it's literally just catch it and sit down. Like he doesn't have any after the catch ability anymore. It's gone.
It's crazy, man. Because like he needs help to get up. Like it's like every time he needs help to get, I would assume that he's going off the field, but he just goes right back into the huddle.
Yeah.
Like what is
he
happening?
hobbles away and he's it looks like he's going towards the sideline, and then Dak's like, "Hey, you're not done. Get back in here." As he comes back.
Seriously, that's literally how it went last week.
He's like, "You're gonna go turn around, do an 8-yard curl."
He still passes to him. Meanwhile, CeeDee Lamb is like running crisp routes and can't get the ball. All right. Anyway, Irv Smith in a great matchup against Arizona. I have him here. Feel free to start Irv Smith over any of the past 3 or 4 tight ends we just mentioned. Juwan Johnson scored 2 touchdowns against. Let's see. Oh yeah, Juwan Johnson scored 2 touchdowns against Arizona last week. right? So feel free to take advantage of that sweet matchup. Evan Ingram, I have him at 13. He's been pretty solid, had a solid floor over the past couple of weeks. Hayden Hurst at 14, followed by Greg Dulcich, I think.
Yeah. Is it Dulcich or Dulcich?
I think it's Dulcich.
I think it's Dulcich too. That rolls off the tongue a little bit better.
Dulcich. Yeah. It doesn't roll off the tongue well at all. Like it doesn't even matter how you say it.
Is it like, do you ever look at fantasy players and think, can that be a household name? Is this somebody that we're going to be,
Dulcich. I used to say Dulcich, but it's not Dulcich.
Right.
It's Dulcich.
Yeah. But I've looked at players. I'm like, is this going to be a household name? I don't think so.
I don't think so. No matter how good he is, no one's going to want to say his name.
Mm-hmm.
I had Kate Otten at 16. I guess that works out. Taysom Hill showing up at number 17 again. Yeah. Oh man, he's showing up everywhere. I love it.
That's supposed to be Juwan Johnson.
That's supposed to be Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson at number 17. Kyle Pitts at 18. And yes, I'm playing all these guys over Kyle Pitts. I have
at this point, you
18.
have to. At this point, you have to.
Dawson Knox is where I draw the line. I have him at 19. And then Harrison Bryant, who will be taking over for David Njoku's role. I have him at 20. Feel free to start Harrison Bryant over Kyle Pitts also.
The thing about Kyle Pitts is suddenly he's touchdown dependent on an offense that doesn't throw touchdowns. It's like, it's disgusting. Like,
pretty much.
His fall has been unceremonious. He's about to fall out of the top 20. He better get something going. Otherwise, he's going to be falling out. And that funny thing,
guys.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You first.
The funny thing that I keep, looking at with these, and we say you could start, feel free to start Irv Smith over any of the three tight ends we just mentioned. Feel free to start Harrison Bryant over Kyle Pitts. All of these rankings outside the top 6 or 7, it's just fluid.
So fluid.
It's the top 6 or 7 and then streamers. You might as well have like week 8 tight end rankings that goes to 7 and then just the streamers. That's all.
All right. That's officially, that's what we're going to do next week.
Yeah.
We're going to have a top 10, and then we're going to have, then the second slide is just going to be like a handful of streamers that we like for that week. Yeah. That sounds like a great idea, Zach.
That's what it's becoming at this point.
If I were you guys, if you're in a dynasty league, I would just grab as many shares of Kyle Pitts as possible right now. You cannot buy anybody lower. In dynasty, I'm not worried about Kyle Pitts at all. Like I am for this season in redraft. Chances are Arthur Smith might not be coaching. Who knows? I mean, they're doing all right this year. But if you're not going to pass the ball when you're down by 3 touchdowns, there's a problem. Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how well
Mariota is the problem. I don't think Marcus Mariota is the problem.
Yeah, and he probably won't be the quarterback next year either. So I think, buy Kyle Pitts in dynasty as much as you can, as many shares as you can. Just do it. And his price will never be lower.
And as good as the Falcons have looked, this season, this is like they're overperforming. Remember that this was supposed to be, bottom of the barrel type team. And I think they've surprised a lot of people the way they've been playing. They've been much more consistent, I think, than we thought they would be. But, even though it looks like, maybe Arthur Smith will get more time coaching, Atlanta, maybe Marcus Mariota will be there. No, there's going to be plenty of turnover after the season. I mean,
I think so.
Are the Falcons are they leading the division right now? Like it's a
I think they are.
Terrifically bad division down there right now. I think they said that they're either tied or they have the lead. So you can only hope that a playoff berth doesn't happen by accident, But I think that at that point, I think everyone around the league understands that that Falcons aren't as good as maybe their standing within their division is.
There's only one way to end the podcast, and that's by talking about Kyle Pitts as being ranked as the tight end 18 on the week. Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend. Love talking to you guys. Thank you to everyone who joined live. Thanks to everyone who listened to the podcast. Again, if you can rate and review the podcast, more importantly, if you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, that would mean the world to us. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see you guys on Monday with the Week 8 review. Enjoy football. Good luck in your leagues this week. See you later. Bye-bye.